about the education of their children. There, these symbols gathered dust, opened on average just 1 or 2 times a year. With that in mind, it is perhaps appropriate that I open this book with Encyclopaedia Britannica as an example of disruption, of how successful companies, continuing to do what made them successful, end up falling to the point of failure. The story of Encyclopaedia Britannica seems a simple one. After turning Microsoft away in 1985, it kept doing what it had done for decades. Meanwhile, Microsoft acquired the content it needed from Funk and Wagnalls, ironically remembered as a poor person's Britannica, and launched Encarta, which would sell millions of CDs, dwarfing Britannica's best years. After its success, of course, Encarta followed a similar fate in its turn, falling by the wayside with the unexpected success of Wikipedia, an encyclopedia that wasn't a business at all. Encyclopaedia Britannica, now a shadow of its former self, opted to discontinue the print version, and with it the encyclopedia salesperson, in 2012. Anecdotes, however, are not all they might seem. Even the simplest accounts look very different when you brush away the dust and explore what really happened. First of all, for Britannica management, rejecting Microsoft was actually an easy decision. In 1985, Microsoft was still a young startup, far from commanding the reputation it would a decade later. Computers themselves were in very few households, around 8.2%. Finally, you could hardly display a CD-ROM in your home the way you could a shelf of encyclopedias. There was no symbolic display of the fact that you cared for your children's future, and thus, one could imagine, no incentive to make the purchase. Given its management's information and perspective, then, Britannica was essentially right to dismiss Microsoft's proposal. Britannica was what we would today call a platform, and the main people it had to recruit, other than customers, were salespeople and contributors. While many today mock Wikipedia editors for doing their work for free, that was essentially the same deal for Britannica's expert contributors. They were paid little except for the prestige of having an entry on their resume. It is far from clear that these experts would feel the same way about contributing to a digital edition. More importantly, a lower-priced CD would not fit in with Britannica's sales process. Salespeople got paid on commission, but in return needed to know that the company had their back. If Britannica started selling a digital computer product in stores, it could easily disrupt a careful balance of incentives and trust the firm had been built on. Indeed, even with the rejection of Microsoft, Britannica sales continued to grow in the years following. That is, until they peaked in 1990. As early as 1983, salespeople were taught to dismiss digital options, claiming that it would take 100 to 200 floppy disks to hold just Britannica's index, that mainframe remote access would be clunky, that there wouldn't be enough words on a screen, and how could you search for an entry anyway? In fact, however, by the late 1980s, Britannica was actively experimenting with digital media. It launched a new media version of Compton's encyclopedia in 1989, with sound bites narrated by Patrick Stewart, of all people, becoming the first encyclopedia on CD-ROM. This was seen by Business Week as path-breaking, but it was also expensive, priced at $895. Thus, it failed to get any traction, and Britannica exited that line in 1993 with a sale of its new media unit to the Chicago Tribune. The early 1990s brought more experimentation from Britannica, though this was concentrated in its advanced technology group based in La Jolla, California, half a continent away from the Chicago head office. They registered eb.com in 1993, before browsers existed, but when the browser arrived, Britannica Online became available in 1994. This was not a sign of complacency about digitization, but, in fact, a remarkably prescient assessment of the future. So what happened? Britannica's sales peaked in 1990, 3 years before Microsoft launched Encarta at a price point of under $100. Britannica responded with its own CD-ROM, this time of its famous encyclopedia, but it sold for $1,200, though the price steadily fell to $200.